Il meeting è gioia.
The meeting in Rimini is joy, is smiling. This is what I was saying a while ago with Father Antonio. The meeting in Rimini is an experience of encounter, and those coming to it wish they can come back. But these days, the meeting in Rimini is also a painful experience because the encounter is not authentic unless it accompanies the human drama. That's why we have been hand in hand and accompanied people who are persecuted. We tried with everything we could to be with them. We are with you. We are for you. Yesterday, it was reiterated several times at the meeting on religious freedom. That's the reason for the appeal for persecuted Christians. We will continue disseminating it, and we will continue asking for support so that the government takes this theme as one of the qualifying themes of the Italian presidency in the second semester of 2014. But it's not just a matter of giving to people who are in sorrow. We also receive it from them. We learn and want to continue learning from them. We are living through a state of emergency for human beings. That's why we are thirsty to know and embrace people and others. That's why this conclusive meeting is particularly moving. Syria has collapsed into death and sorrow. From Syria, we have two friends, and our theme is today, you can live in persecution. Let me introduce Father Antonio Antranig Ayvazian, who is the spiritual head of Catholic Armenians in Upper Mesopotamia, northern Syria. He founded schools, universities, shelters for young people, hospitals and institutes for the disabled. His life is a fight. He also represents the World Food Programme for the northeast of Syria. Then next to me, we also have Father Nawras Sammour, who is in charge of the Jesuits refugee services for the Middle East and North Africa. He lives in Damascus, and he helps refugees and those abandoned day and night. He takes care of the human debris provoked by war that is very much neglected by everybody. Then Massimo Ilardo will take the floor. He is the director of Aiuto, alla, Chiesa, Soffre, Help to a Suffering Church. We know him very well here at the meeting in Rimini, but I will introduce him later. Now, before giving the floor to Father Antonio, I would like to propose to you that we see a videotape which takes us to a different dimension. It was shot in Nigeria, in a particularly difficult area of that country. It's hard to reach and it's hard to get information from this area. It's an area in which the Christians are threatened of annihilation, true annihilation. A freelance reporter called Riccardo Bicicchi, who's here with us, brought this videotape to us. You must be brave to take information to us from certain areas in the world. It's part of a more complex, larger project, and so far this is what Riccardo made. It was published on the website of the Corriere della Sera. That's why you will see the name Corriere.it. It's important, though, because it makes you understand the horizons of this state of emergency for human beings. How vast the problem is. We'll see this video and then discuss Syria today. Close to the border with Syria and Cameroon. They killed my brother Luca, then they killed our neighbor Lawan. They killed Bitrus and also our neighbor Jos. They also killed another neighbor of ours. They killed also another one. Then they killed another friend living in the neighborhood of Jerusalem.
Particularly in Maiduguri, is
near Maiduguri, the situation is pathetic. You hear people being killed by gun.
being slaughtered as you are slaughtering a sheep.
Damaturu St. Mary's Church.
In Nigeria, before this time, we were living very peacefully with one another. That is among the Christians and the Muslims. There were no problems. This sect, the religious sect known as Boko Haram, is a Hausa word, but it means anything Western is evil. Anything Western is evil. Western education is evil. Wearing of clothes is evil, and so on and so forth. But the whole thing is that the politicians are using these youth who do not know what they are doing.
Mubi Diocese of Maiduguri.
My life is not like before because you will not feel comfortable due to what is still happening. Again, even if you are a Muslim, if you do not believe in the Boko Haram, so they will kill you. If you do not believe what they are doing, so you are not part of them. You are not a true Muslim. So they will kill you or destroy your family. they are through with the killing, the Boko Haram. During that night, we start hearing the gunshot. Tau, tau. You hear 2 gunshots here. In some minutes, again, you hear another gunshot like 5. So they went to the student villa. That place, that area is students that live in that area, only students. So they will knock at your door, at the gate. If they knock the gate, so if you open your gate, they will ask of your name. If they hear your name is English name, they will call all the males. They will just shoot them and cut their neck. They will slaughter their neck. So this is how they used to do house by house. House by house.
Non c'è lingua, non c'è...
There's no language, there are no words to understand this situation.
Io penso questo problema non è...
I think the problem is not so much one of Christians against Muslims, but in this region there is a big problem of poverty.
Non c'è scuole, non c'è...
There are no schools, there are no opportunities for the youth, there are no jobs, there's nothing to do. This is a big problem in this region.
On the 2nd of this month, I went to a village that I was informed that some gunmen or non-gunmen came to a church. This is the church door. This is the hole made by the gun. This is how they boggled it. These are the points now from the bullets, as you can see. Okay, this is the inside the office leading to the sanctuary. The sight made me cry inwardly, and that they shot him, and when he didn't die, they, overpowered him and then slaughtered him. You can see. This is the corpse of the mother who came to cry over her dead son, and they shot her. What will even make you to kill such a woman? Hadn't she the right to cry over her son? I said, are these people human beings? I doubt.
In fact, what we are looking for is reconciliation, justice, and peace. And this is what we are preaching to our people. And this is what our people carry even to those that seem to be our enemies. Our own is to hold on to the teaching of Jesus Christ, to love all, whether people hate us or not. And that's exactly what we are doing in this diocese. But I want to assure you of one thing. Once our leaders are able to bring us together as a united body, as a united country, as a united family, and take everybody along, wonderful things will happen. There will be no Boko Haram, and we'll experience tremendous spiritual, pastoral, economic, social, and moral growth in this country.
Vorrei ringraziare ancora Riccardo.
Let me please thank Riccardo again for this testimony, for really showing us this reality where so many of our brothers live and die so harshly. Now the floor to Father Antranig Ayvazian, Father Antonio, who will tell us about the reality of Christians in Syria and how one lives at a test all the time.
Buonasera a tutti.
Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to warmly thank all those who did their best to invite us to this beautiful meeting, starting from the Bucciolati family to Father Caron and Dr. Guarnieri. Let me start by reading the appeal for the persecuted Christians by Pope Francis. And I will explain why I put this geographical map of Syria to understand what is happening there. The Holy Father says, finally a thought for Christians who in various parts of the world have difficulty in openly professing their faith and in being recognized and given the right to live with dignity. They are our brothers and sisters, courageous witnesses, even more numerous than our martyrs in the early centuries, who endure with apostolic perseverance the many current forms of persecution. Quite a few also risk their lives to remain faithful to the gospel of Christ. I wish to assure my closeness in prayer to individuals, families and communities who suffer violence and intolerance. And I repeat to them the consoling words of Jesus, take courage, I have overcome the world. Dear friends, I was born in Syria. I'm Armenian by origin. I knew nothing of what had happened to my parents and my ancestors. I opened my eyes in a city called Kamishli in the north of Syria. You see it right at the corner up there in the north. Then I started attending a Catholic school. We knew nothing. It was just many boys knowing nothing, going to church. We did not know who was a Jew, who was a Christian, who was a Muslim. We went to Mass together and served Mass together, all together, Muslims, Christians, Catholics and Jews. This was how this country looked like when we were born and raised there. In my childhood, Syria was a place welcoming others, Then we were informed that the Armenians had been massacred, and what was left of this great people had gone to Syria, where they were most welcome, well accepted, and found their citizenship. Isn't it today perhaps that it is not by chance that 3 patriarchate seats are in Damascus? We know that in this world we don't have Plato's republic. There are needs everywhere. There is poverty, there are injustices, inequalities. There is no world where man can fulfill his ambitions. But in Syria, we Christians, Muslims and Jews were a whole family, formed just one family. As a young boy, the nicest day in my life was when the Jewish Easter would arrive, and Rahmun would bring the Jewish bread in large amounts to us, and we would leave everything that our mother had prepared and to simply eat that bread. We were so happy, and the person that had brought this bread, a partner of my brother, would go back home and bring some more. That's how we started our lives in Syria. After studying in Lebanon, then in Rome, then in France, then back in Lebanon, we started hearing about confessions, Muslims, Christians. We hear about Shiites, Sunnis, Catholics, Orthodox. To us, well, it was difficult to understand as a concept. We didn't understand what was happening, but it seemed that the world was getting ready for the events which we are experiencing now. One day, the Gulf War, there was the Gulf War, and then thousands of refugees came to our region from Iran. We immediately opened our schools, our bishop seats. There were not only refugees, but a systematic flight of all Christians from Iran. The country was sort of emptied from the Christians. More than 1.4 million Christians came to our country. And little by little, almost no one remained in Iran. Then the Arab Spring came, as it was called, the creative chaos. It is said that in our countries there are many inequalities, many injustices. Maybe we are right, maybe, and we agree, but where is it that there are no injustices in this world? We've seen the example of Nigeria. Look at the geographical map of the world. Out of 198 countries that belong to UN, where is all that justice? Where is all the justice wanted by mankind and their ambitions? When the Arab Spring broke out in Tunisia, then in Egypt and Libya, we Syrians thought it would be impossible for it to reach our country as well. We thought of being a tolerant country, a country where everyone is a big family. But on March 15th, 2011, we saw that in the city of Darha, in the south of Syria, there were painful happenings and events, children who were imprisoned, Then violence started, killings. At the beginning, we heard that many policemen were shot. You would know their names, the dates, and then they became a number. And then at some point you don't know their names and don't even know their numbers. We don't know about the casualty number of this war. And little by little the war came to the door of our cities. This enormous and dramatic extension of the conflict put all the Church, Orthodox, Protestant and Catholic, in face of a very special issue: what to do with the faithful, what to do with the believers, how to help them. The bombings had already reached our cities. The victims were countless. We sent out an appeal to the Holy See and all of help and assistance. But it did not end there. We say that an injustice cannot be corrected with another injustice, and two injustices don't make justice. In this beloved Syria, as Father Francis says, so many priests were kidnapped and killed. Also bishops, archbishops, priests, and many lay people were kidnapped. Where are they? Who knows how they are? Who knows whether they are still alive or dead? No answer. Where are the big powers? Where's the UN? Well, two archbishops, two priests, not to mention those who were decapitated, Father Francis Murat, the last one. I'd like to show you, therefore, this church, which used to be the Orthodox Armenian church. It was burned. The inhabitants of the neighborhood of this neighborhood in Aleppo were told, you have to leave this city. A Christian cannot live among us. When I was informed of this, I said, it's impossible that a Syrian has said this to another Syrian. It's not part of our culture. We must know who these people are. And then one day I was called and was told that the chapel which holds the rests of the martyrs was also destroyed, and the hospital in front of it was occupied. So I contacted these people, and initially they did not answer the phone. Then they called me, and I told them, what are you doing? This hospital is at the service of poor people. There's no Christian in this area. The chapel is just there for putting the bones of our martyrs. And they said, if you are brave enough, come and see us. The next day I went there with, using my own car. I went to a place where there were many soldiers with all their arms, bombs, guns and weapons, and about a dozen of guerrilla men came out. I said, hello. I said, Assalamu alaikum. No one answered. And then one came. He spoke Arabic. He said, I'm from Qatar. My name is Faisal Mohammed Wara. He had an American cell phone. And he said, we are here we want the corpses of our martyrs. Well, what do they have to do with this hospital and this church? They said, we will make everything explode unless we're given back the corpses of our martyrs. So I said, well, thank you. I went to the governor. He was not very happy because they were afraid of my security, of my safety. But, I'm stubborn, and I took some very good young people, like those here at the meeting in Rimini, serving with a lot of goodwill. So we went to search for these corpses on the battlefields. When the first one was found, the dogs had already eaten part of their feet and legs. And when we found the first one, those were really very happy. So this is a testimony. There is indeed violence, but if you get close to these people, you can find a way of discussing in a human way. They're good people. When I asked them, what are you doing here? They answered, we were ordered to come to this country because it's a country of unfaithful people. We have to bring Islam back here, and that's why we have to kill and destroy. We do not understand anything of politics. We don't know who is at the government. We only have one single aim, that is to return this country back to Islam, so that there are no unfaithful people. I said, well, I am an unfaithful person. I was wearing my gown, my ring, my cross, but in all respect, these people said, you did your right, your human right, but we have other goals. I will finish my first part because then I have to give the floor to others. But then destruction began, systematic destruction of the churches, not only in the Christian neighborhood and the church. This is the minimum I can show you of what happened to our churches. In the city of Deir ez-Zor, there is no church anymore. There is no Christian. And our Catholic Church, after having destroyed it completely, well, they transformed a classroom into a tribunal of the Islamic Sharia. 12 days ago, I was in Armenia before coming here, and the custodians called me and said, other people came. They went up to the chapel, they took the cross, the metal cross, rather a big one, and they took it away as a war prisoner. After 2 days, the news was that the cross was trialed, and as a sentence, it had to be cut in pieces, both from the front and the back, because it symbolizes idolatry. I said, well, if you like, I will send you 20 more crosses, if this is the problem. This is the situation today. Saying that there is violence everywhere is true. As Christians, we know already that our lives are becoming almost impossible. 562,000 Christians already left the country. They don't know where to go. Some sold everything they possessed. They were well-off people. They had their homes, their jobs there. Others don't know where to go. They are on fields in Lebanon, in Sweden, in Germany, in Armenia, some even in Italy. This destruction of the churches has not ended there. They started trialing not just the living bishops and archbishops, but look at the statue of the Virgin in the village of Guarnieri, which is completely Catholic. There are Armenians and people of Latin origin there. They have trialed the statue itself. First, it was shot at because it did not have the complete veil on the face, and then it had to have its head cut because of being a symbol of idolatry and paganism. This is inconceivable in Syria. Our friends who know our country know that something like this could have never happened. I will leave this picture on the screen to give the floor to the other speaker, and then I will close later. Thank you very much, Father Antonio, for your moving testimony. And now I'd like to give the floor to Father Nawras Sammour, who's in charge of the Jesuits refugee service for the Middle East and North Africa. He will speak French. He lives in Damascus and was born in Aleppo. Thank you. First of all, let me thank for inviting me here. Thank you for inviting me here at the meeting in Rimini. It's a true source of joy and happiness. After seeing the very sad, appalling pictures of what is happening in Syria, let me tell you right from the beginning that absolutely no one in Syria can objectively speak about the Syrian reality. It would be too complex, too complicated. In order to understand the Syrian reality, major efforts should be made. I will start from the last pictures. We have seen very appalling ones. Let me then try to paint a picture which is a gloomy, a dark picture of Syria. Today in Syria, we can no longer say that you can live safely. It's no longer a safe place where you are spared from violence and atrocities. This place or such a place doesn't exist anymore. Today, according to the UN estimates and the estimates of other state and non-state organizations, the deaths are in excess of 100,000. There are no official statistics, almost 15,000 children. This number is unfortunately a reliable one, in my opinion. I would say that the total may even become 2- or 3-fold by the end of the year, if this massacre continues at this pace. Not to mention the people who have disappeared, the people who were abducted, kidnapped, or arrested. Then apparently it's 3.5 million, the people who are internal refugees, so Syrians who stay in Syria, but because of violence were forced to go elsewhere in the country. For the most part, these people left without anything, just the clothes they were wearing. These people need everything, absolutely everything. Some of these people had to leave several times. They went to a place to find shelter, then they had to move elsewhere because the place where they had originally found their shelter was one where there was a violence outbreak again. So they keep moving from one place to the other. In addition to this, you have all those people who can still live at home but feel the consequences of the events. Unemployment, for example, and suddenly everyone lives below the poverty threshold. 2.5 million people. This is the number of people in need. Then we have 2 million refugees who left Syria for neighboring countries, Lebanon, Turkey, Jordan, or Algeria and Egypt, not to mention those who have two nationalities and left the country, most of the intelligentsia, so the country is somehow emptying itself. Furthermore, there is a crime rate which increases, kidnappings for ransom, thefts, etc. And this significantly limits the possibility to go from one place to the other, even if these would be so-called safe and calm places. So let's move from this gloomy picture to a real problem. We see the rise of radicalism and fundamentalism. It is clear that today radical groups with Al-Qaeda inspiration indeed exist in Syria. No one can deny this. They try and impose their way of seeing the world, of living, and they try to impose this on everybody, also those belonging to the opposition. To them, this is the absolute truth. According to some people, these are the people with the greatest financial means, so they can recruit more fighters and they can have more weapons available to them. So they're very much feared on the field and they are the strongest. However, there is one point that I would like to stress. Who is it that now represents the man on the street in Syria today, where there's not only one representative, because there are places which are dominated by war chiefs, and these are the supreme chiefs. And then one last point, and here I'm speaking as a Christian, the uncertainty and anguish of the Christian community. It is true that all Syrians are largely worried, and it is true that nobody has the monopoly of suffering, in the sense that all Syrians are suffering because of the rise of radical Islamism, because of recent memories of violence, what is happening in Iraq and what is still happening in Egypt, Lebanon, etc. The Syrian Christians are even more worried than other people, and also their fellow countrymen. Actually, they are not the direct target, except for the areas which are dominated by the radical groups. The radical groups actually have the Christians as their target, but usually it's not the Christians who are the target. They are the weakest chain of the society. They're the weakest link in the chain of the society, and they are the victims of atrocities. They are affected by the same atrocities as the others, but the impact on them is larger, especially because the Christians today are weak. We are scattered everywhere. We have our own internal problems, and very many of them. Therefore, faced with this picture, which is rather gloomy and obscure, I may say, like the nice exhibition that I visited today, I can say that, can I say that light can only but emerge from darkness? Well, maybe Christianity will come to an end in Syria, and this will be the end of Syria. But if we say that there's nothing to do, then at the same time it's time to say that I'm a believer, I'm faithful, and I trust, I feel confidence. If you say that there's nothing more to do, you may also say that everything has to be done again. It's a traumatic situation to the Christians in Syria and the Middle East. This could be an opportunity. I would say yes, it can be an opportunity and a grace, the grace of being weak. As Saint Paul, as the Lord, as Saint Paul said to the Lord, it is weakness that is my strength. If you are weak, you are not scaring anyone. Nobody is afraid of you. You're open to all people. And the Lord is the Lord of all mankind, of all human beings. Ours is an encompassing God, an inclusive one who encompasses all. A Lord who's open to all. That's why in the name of our Christian faith and the gospel, we cannot say we can't do anything anymore. No, on the contrary, everything has to be remade and redone from the beginning. We don't have to feel discouraged and give up. We have to do something. The consequences of all this are not well known and preset. But isn't the gospel a call to adventure, the adventure of the cross? This is an open issue. Our Christian option, the Syrian Christian option, the option of Middle East Christians, Syrian Christians, and my personal option is this. We stay there and continue working on the basis of the gospel. This is why we do emergency action. We are at the service of 17,000 families within Syria, in Damascus, in Homs, in Aleppo, and along the shoreline. Each family receives food aid every month. There are kitchens. You saw the pictures of our services before. We serve 17,000 people. We give them a hot meal in Aleppo and also serve meals to 5,000 people in the rural area of Damascus. We also distribute non-food products such as clothing, mattresses, etc. We also provide medical care to civilians, especially those suffering from chronic diseases. We have clinics, especially in Aleppo. We distribute and dispense drugs. We serve approximately 12,000 people who are sick throughout throughout Syria. Third aspect, psychosocial activities, especially for children. Children who are the victims of atrocities need places where they can express themselves and release and free all the negative energy that they have been subject to. Children are really the light of their parents' eyes. Once we have gained the family's confidence by working with children, we can also reach the rest of the families, approach the rest of the families, knowing that 80% of our brothers and sisters helped in all the cities where we are present belong to many communities. 80% are Muslim and 20% Christian. So we also do major reconciliation work. So to come to my conclusions now, I would say that the Christians of the East and the Syrian Christians along a fracture line which crucifies humanity in its flesh. It's a sentence by Bishop Pierre Claverie, a Christian martyr in Algeria. This is what he said: we're along the fracture line which crucifies mankind in its flesh. And we're really there. Our church is there along this fracture line, but we want to be a true church. We want to be the voice of the silent majority of Syria. The majority in Syria is silent. These people are for justice, for change, for a united Syria without discriminations. This is a silent minority. We, at church level, try to work also with Muslims of goodwill to express the voice of this majority, and we hope that the Lord can help us. Thank you.
Antonio, velocemente.
Father Antonio wanted to briefly add something. We have heard that there are both material and spiritual needs. So we wonder, how do Christians live in this situation? How do the faithful, the schools, the churches live in this situation under these circumstances? You know, the north of Syria, as you saw on the map, is out of history. There is no other means of transportation apart from the aircraft. And the airplanes arrive once or twice daily for a population exceeding almost 2 million. We are in a period which can be called a catacomb period. The faithful arrive in a hidden way, especially in some cities where we do not have any churches anymore, no Christian presence. Those who arrive at night. They ask for sacraments. They don't really know what to do. And I really think of the early Christians in the catacombs. Many children want sacraments. All weddings are celebrated during the day. They used to be celebrated at night. They come in a secret way. They can't show that they are Christians. They can't show, for example, signs of wedding ceremonies, flowers, and all the rest. Now, I wonder, we see that many countries are involved in that conflict. Where do they come from? Well, this is something I asked those lords. Where do you come from? Those people I asked, where do you come from? The majority were not Syrian. 90% were not Syrian. All borders to Syria are now open. More than 140,000 guerrilla men came into our country. What are they doing? You have seen the pictures in front of you. They come from countries where there is no Christianity, no Christian presence. In Chechnya, where they came from, Chechnya, Libya, Pakistan, anywhere. They can't even speak Arabic. Well, those are good people. They were told, do your job and free Islam or free those countries from the unfaithful to Islam. I respect the zeal of these people, but all countries involved in this conflict, please retreat, go away. After 48 hours, there will be peace again in Syria. The Lord, our God, must go to the road to Damascus again. God revealed himself on the road to Damascus, and also John Paul II went to the road to Damascus in 2002. He was so happy to see all the people in front of him. He asked a cardinal, can you say who is Christian and who's Muslim? The cardinal said no. And the Pope, the Holy Father, said, this is Syria. We firmly trust that this Syria will be back, because there can be no Syria without tolerance, without Christians, Jews and Muslims. And Syria has been so for 10,000 years. Now, before going back to Rome, John Paul II in the Damascus airport, putting his right hand on the shoulders of the president, said, I am the oldest man who's responsible for this world, and you are among the youngest. Listen, this is St. Paul's city. This is where St. Paul met the Lord, and God protects Syria. This country, in spite of the fact that the majority is Muslim, in all flags, in all places, in the institutions, in the schools, has the word of John Paul II. It is God who protects Syria. So let me close with a prayer. We have to get out of this silence and prejudices. We have to be the witnesses of freedom. The cross has always been trialed everywhere in the world, even here, where the cross was removed from the schools and the institutions. Likewise, in Spain, it's a sentence of a tribunal, a European court. They don't want to see the cross, but does it disturb you? In Syria, we want to see the cross, even if it's trialed, but eventually the cross will win, because there will be a resurrection. We Christians of the East are not afraid. We will go back to that country because we love it. We cry for it. We feel homesick for that country, because in this country, all persecuted Christians, all killed Christians, all martyrs for faith found the only shelter. Had it not been for Syria, today I would not speak Italian as a Christian. This is the difference. We have to pray a lot, and I will finish with what our dear Father Francis said. He calls Syria his beloved Syria. He said, believing means trusting a merciful love, always embracing existence, very powerful in the ability to redress the distortions of history. There are distortions in history, but we feel confident that Jesus will win. Jesus will do this, similarly to what John Paul II said about St. Paul. Thank you. Very briefly, Father Sammour, before giving the floor to Massimo Ilardo for the conclusive remarks, I'd like to ask you something. You said everything has to be done.
Cosa intende dire con questo? E noi cosa possiamo fare per voi?
What can we do for you?
Je dirais,
I would say that there is international interest in Syria. This is interest in Syria, not just at political level, but at ecclesial level. There is interest in Syria too. I personally experienced this with all the sympathy that I received from everywhere in the world and all my friends. In the church, the very fact of being together and praying for Syria is something important. It's not the first occasion to do so, and not even the last one. Let me also stress the efforts made by the humanitarian agencies of the Church, Caritas and all the others. I will not mention all the organizations, but they have made tremendous efforts. And also the interest of the Holy Father, the interest of the other states. We have received and raised great interest at humanitarian level as well, but also at church level, apart from political level. I understand little of politics, but when a decision is made, it cannot be made simply observing Syria on a map, because Syria is not just a map in Google Earth. It's millions of people, millions of human beings. And if anything has to be done, one has to consider the Syrians. And when I speak about the Syrians, it's people who have no voice, no access to the media. So there are many things which you have made already, and we expect that you will do more. Now Massimo Ilardo, the Italian director of Aiuto, alla Chiesa che Soffre, Help to the Suffering Church. He will tell us about Syria. They have a report every year which is used by the governments in order to take a snapshot of the religious freedom in the world. They do precious work in this respect. Thank you very much, Massimo, for being with us. Good evening, everybody. Let me first thank Emilia, Guarnieri and Roberto, Fontolan and all the organizers of the meeting, not only because they have invited me back. Last year I was at the meeting to say what the living conditions of Christians are in Iran. Today I'm pleased to be here together with Father Sammour and Antranig. You heard many things about Syria from the previous speakers. Let me briefly tell you about what we have done in more than 2 years of crisis together with our Christian brothers. 1,096,574 euros. This is what we have donated for refugees inside Syria from the beginning of the conflict. It's impressive, especially if you consider that this number is not very far from the 1,250,000 euros donated for support to the Iraqi refugees from 2003 to date. This makes you understand the extent of this crisis. For those of you who do not know our work, I'd like to underscore that Aiuto, alla Chiesa che Soffre, Help to the Suffering Church, is not a humanitarian association, but it's a papal opera with the goal of sustaining the pastoral of the church all over the world, especially in those countries where the poverty and Christian persecution make it impossible to perform the church's mission. Our founder came here and was also very well accepted. His name is Father Werenfried van Straten. We're celebrating the centennial from his birth. His task was dry off God's tears wherever he cries, and God, so said Father Werenfried, cries in all the afflicted, all those who are suffering and crying in our period of time. It's not easy to identify the most urgent needs of our church and our Christian brothers. That's why our association entrusts bishops to do this, because they, better than others, know the needs and priorities of a diocese. That's why it's not us giving rise to projects, but we simply respond to the requests of bishops writing from all over the world. And thanks God, with the help of our 600,000 benefactors in 2012, we received donations for more than 90 million euros, and we can say yes to many people. Now back to Syria. Already at the end of 2011, our projects in that tormented country started to change in nature. Before then, our support was support to a lively church with many confessions, bringing forward a testimony of faith in the cradle of Christianity. In January 2011, 2 months before the beginning of the crisis, we supported the organization of the first forum on the family in Damascus. The humanitarian aid was only meant for Iraqi refugees, and then the situation started worsening, and we set aside the first contributions to the families of Damascus homes and those that had taken shelter in the Valley of the Christians, who initially seemed to have found some serenity in that valley of western Syria close to Lebanon. I remember, and I'd like to highlight this, what happened 1 year ago in a Christian village very close to the border with Lebanon. More than 12,000 people were trapped. The bridges and the roads were interrupted. Those days, the person responsible for us for the Middle East was in Lebanon for talks with Cardinal Becharai when the Maronite Patriarch was informed of the tragic happening. Our organization then promptly set aside extraordinary contributions to Caritas Lebanon for purchasing food and commodities for the inhabitants of that village, and also help and aid was provided in the subsequent 5 months. All our aid is distributed through the diocese and Caritas for 2 reasons. First of all, because we want to make sure that what is donated so generously by our benefactors actually reaches those in need, and also because the Church is the only one that the Christians trust. Many faithful, in fact, prefer to address the Church instead of the United Nations. Many of them don't want to be recorded as refugees because this would mean that they are taken pictures of and enrolled in the register of the High Commissioner for Refugees. The United Nations are identified with the West, and therefore the faithful fear that there are revenges once they are back home at the end of the conflict. We should not neglect these problems. Also, many Muslims approach the Church, whose doors are always open to all without any distinction of beliefs. Not to mention other problems. Just the ordeal which on last March 26th hit Kamil, a young seminarist of Damascus, going back home after serving at the poor's canteen. Kidnapping for ransom is tragically frequent. Last October, Father Fadi Haddad tried to convince kidnappers to release one of his parishioners who had been kidnapped. He was kidnapped again also and found dead after a few days. Obviously, my thought goes to 2 bishops, Johanna Ibrahim and Bulos Yazi, of whom no one knows anything since last April, and Father Dall'Olio, and that we have known for many years and who has supported the refoundation of the monastery Deir Marmusa. Kidnappings like these are afflicting and hitting the whole Christian community. Our organization has always supported the Church, which is the only reference point and support for the Syrian faithful. But also the Church needs help. The priests, the nuns, the bishops have the same difficulties and the same tragedies as the population. We shouldn't forget this. They risk their lives every day to continue serving God and their community, and it's thanks to them that many Christians chose to stay in Syria. But for the faith in Christ to continue to exist in the cradle of Christianity, the faithful have to find hope in the future again, and we can help them too, ensuring our economic support to them, but above all guaranteeing to them that we are close to them in prayer. Pray for us. It's what the bishops, the refugees and the priests often tell us. They need to feel comforted by the universal Church. They must know that the world does not ignore their drama. Every day they remember us. They remember us with gratitude in their prayers. You must know this. Maybe this is the most important thing I wanted to tell you. And we have to do the same. This is why this evening I would like to close my presentation with a prayer, the same one with which His Beatitude Gregorius III Laham wanted to open a meeting which our Italian office hosted last October in Rome. Prayer for peace in Syria. God of compassion, hear the cries of the people of Syria. Bring healing to those suffering from the violence. Bring comfort to those mourning the dead. Strengthen Syria's neighbors in their care and welcome for refugees. Convert the hearts of those who have taken up arms, and protect those committed to peace. God of hope, inspire leaders to choose peace over violence and to seek reconciliation with enemies. Inspire the Church around the world with compassion for the people of Syria, and give us hope for a future of peace built on justice for all. We ask this through Jesus Christ, Prince of Peace and Light of the world. Amen. Thank you for your kind attention. While Emilia Guarnieri, the president of the meeting, is coming up here to unveil the last secrets of this edition, I would like us to applaud to our friends who have come from Syria, so that they can embrace on our behalf all our Syrian brothers and sisters. And also thanks to Massimo, Ilardo, for all that you said, and also for remembering Father van Straten. You can do many things for Syria. AFSI has also launched a major campaign for Syria called 10 for Syria. Emilia, the last words of this meeting are yours. A special thanks to everybody, because I believe that never like this year we have being together, and experience has won over everything. What happened 1 minute ago, a text which spontaneously became an experience of prayer for everybody, is the sign that what happens here in the meeting in Rimini is true. It's a human experience. Let me read, because the communique and the press release introduces the secret revelation that Mr. Fontolan was referring to. I will read the press release. At the beginning, you have the words of Pope Francis. Man is a mystery which cannot be reduced to any image which is formed of it in the society, or which the earthly power tends to impose. The message of Father Francis has accompanied us along this week as a judgment on the dramatic situation of the present mankind, poor of love, thirsty for truth and justice, beggars of God, as the servant of God, Monsignor Luigi Giussani, has always underscored in a skillful way. Then the communique, the press release, includes some parts of the message of the Italian President of the Republic. I'm thinking of the young people crowding the big halls in Rimini, and I wish them that they can make the contribution. We are all waiting for the youngest generation. The emergency state in which we are living is a very severe form of spiritual impoverishment. In this sense, the contribution which comes to the highest levels of the Catholic Church is a contribution that only blind people cannot avoid to see. Many people came to the meeting for over 100 meetings, 5 big exhibitions, and 23 shows, etc. But the answer people were looking for here in Rimini was, how can one live? These days were an opportunity to meet everybody without waiting the others to meet us or look for us. There were many public and personal encounters showing that the meeting is not afraid of the others and diversity. The aim of the meeting in Rimini is to meet anyone. This is documented by 800,000 visitors that experienced the meeting as if they were at home in a climate of actual respect for each other, not abstract tolerance. The Corriere della Sera at the beginning of the meeting mentioned the words by Don Caron in May 2012 on the alternative between life as a testimony or search for hegemony, inviting to follow the Rimini Week because the frail Italian society needs something which helps it recover, retrieve its values and start again. The people, we who participated in the meeting in Rimini, can judge whether the experience here was up to this challenge of witness. And the testimony which was offered to us today as well by all those Christians who are persecuted and killed because of faith still today has made us take in the cry of Father Francis, to launch an appeal for persecuted Christians that was first signed by our Prime Minister, Mr. Letta. We will continue disseminating this appeal in many cities in Italy and will propose this as a qualifying item in the agenda of the coming semester of Italian presidency at the Council of the European Union. At the end of the meeting, we'll go back to our countries, more than 80, and our cities in greater awareness of the state of emergency of human beings and with the desire of offering our experience to the others, feeling sure that the road to recovery at all levels is only a real event in man's life. We would like to continue meeting anyone in the awareness that as long as we if we don't bring Jesus to mankind and human beings, we only have done too little for the others, and the man is the way of the church. This is why the next meeting title is Towards the Periphery of the World and of Existence. The fate has not left man alone, and the next meeting will take place in August 2014, from the 24th to the 30th of August 2014. Goodbye, everybody.